The dust of the trail billowed around Penelope Nolan's wagon as the front wheel hit a deep rut and gave way with a sickening crack. The sudden lurch threw her against the seat, her hands instinctively moving to protect the growing swell of her belly. 5 months pregnant and more than 200 miles from her intended destination of Caldwell, Kansas, she was now stranded in the middle of the unforgiving plains with nothing but the blistering June sun of 1878 bearing down on her. Whoa there! She called to her team of horses, pulling back on the reins with trembling hands. Her heart hammered in her chest as the wagon tilted precariously to one side. Penelope had been traveling for nearly 3 weeks since leaving St. Louis, following her husband's death from typhoid fever. Thomas had left her with little more than debts and the promise of a new start at her cousin's homestead in Caldwell. Carefully, she climbed down from the wagon seat, wincing at the dull ache in her lower back. At 24, Penelope had never imagined she'd be widowed, pregnant, and alone on the frontier. She examined the broken wheel with dismay. The wooden spokes had shattered and the iron rim had bent beyond repair. She knew enough about wagons to understand this wasn't something she could fix herself. Penelope scanned the horizon, hoping to spot a settlement or another traveler, but saw nothing but the endless prairie stretching in all directions. Her provisions would last perhaps another week, and the water barrel was half empty. The nearest town, according to her map, was at least 2 days' ride away. She was contemplating her next move when the sound of hoofbeats reached her ears. Penelope turned, shielding her eyes from the sun, and saw a lone rider approaching from the east. Her hand moved to the small pistol hidden in the folds of her skirt. Thomas had insisted she learn to shoot before they left Missouri, one of the few useful things he'd done for her. The rider slowed as he neared, and Penelope could see he was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a weather-beaten Stetson and riding a magnificent chestnut stallion. He stopped a respectable distance away and touched the brim of his hat. "Afternoon, madam. Looks like you've got yourself some trouble there." His voice was deep but gentle, his face obscured by several days' worth of stubble and the shadow of his hat. "The wheel broke when I hit that rut," Penelope replied, keeping her hand near her weapon. "I don't suppose you know anything about fixing wagon wheels." The man dismounted with an easy grace that spoke of years in the saddle. As he approached, she could see his face clearly tanned by the sun, with kind blue eyes and lines at their corners that suggested he smiled often. He couldn't be much older than 30. "Adam Dawson, madam," he introduced himself with another tip of his hat, "and as it happens, I know a thing or two about wagon wheels." "Penelope Nolan," she replied, relaxing slightly. "I'm bound for Caldwell." Adam nodded, already kneeling to examine the damaged wheel. "That's a fair piece from here. You traveling alone, Mrs. Nolan?" Penelope hesitated before answering. "I am. My husband passed 3 months ago. I'm going to stay with my cousin." His eyes flickered briefly to her belly, then back to her face without judgment. "I'm sorry for your loss." The simple sincerity in his words brought unexpected tears to her eyes, which she quickly blinked away. Adam turned his attention back to the wheel. "This is beyond repair, I'm afraid. You'll need a new one entirely. I've got a homestead about 5 miles west of here. I can take you there, and we can sort out getting your wagon fixed." Penelope weighed her options. Stay here alone with dwindling supplies, or trust this stranger who seemed genuinely concerned for her welfare. "How do I know I can trust you, Mr. Dawson?" she asked directly. He stood, brushing the dust from his hands. "You don't, Mrs. Nolan, but I give you my word as a gentleman that you'll be safe. My sister Emily lives with me. She's expecting her husband back from a cattle drive any day now. You're welcome to stay with us until your wagon's repaired." Something in his straightforward manner reassured her. I appreciate your offer, Mr. Dawson. I accept. They agreed that Adam would ride ahead to fetch his own wagon to transport her belongings. Penelope would wait with her wagon, and he would return before sundown. True to his word, Adam reappeared just as the sun was beginning to set, driving a sturdy farm wagon pulled by 2 draft horses. With efficient movements, they transferred her essential belongings to his wagon. Adam secured her team of horses to the back of his wagon, and they set off toward his homestead as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "Been in these parts long?" Penelope asked, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. "5 years now," Adam replied, keeping his eyes on the trail. "Came west after the war with my brother-in-law, James. He married my sister before we left Tennessee. We built the place up from nothing. It's not much, but it's ours." "You fought in the war?" she asked cautiously. Adam nodded once. "Union side. 7th Tennessee Infantry. I don't talk about it much." Penelope understood. Her own father had fought for the Confederacy and had returned a changed man, carrying wounds both visible and invisible. "My father was at Shiloh," she offered. "He said after that he couldn't see much sense in brothers killing brothers." Adam glanced at her, a new respect in his eyes. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Penelope replied softly. "He passed 2 winters ago." As they traveled, Penelope noticed Adam's considerate nature. He helped her down from the wagon when they stopped to rest the horses, offered her water from his canteen, and asked if she needed to stop more frequently because of her condition. His quiet attentiveness was a stark contrast to Thomas's often dismissive behavior. The moon was high when they finally arrived at Adam's homestead. It was a modest but well-built cabin with a barn and corral nearby. A vegetable garden stretched to one side, and a small orchard of young trees stood beyond that. Lamplight glowed in the windows, and a woman appeared in the doorway as they approached. "Adam, is that you?" she called. "It's me, Emily," he answered. "I've brought a visitor." Mrs. Nolan's wagon broke down on the east trail. Emily Dawson hurried down the porch steps. She was younger than Adam, perhaps 21 or 22, with the same blue eyes and a friendly smile. Her belly protruded noticeably beneath her apron. "Oh, you poor thing," she exclaimed when she saw Penelope. "You must be exhausted. Come inside, I've got stew keeping warm." The interior of the cabin was simple but comfortable. A large main room served as both kitchen and living area, with 2 doors leading to what Penelope presumed were bedrooms. Everything was neat and clean, with handmade quilts and curtains adding touches of color. Emily ushered Penelope to a chair at the table and ladled out a bowl of fragrant beef stew. "When are you due?" she asked, nodding at Penelope's belly. "October, the doctor thought," Penelope replied, gratefully accepting the bowl. "And you?" "August," Emily smiled, placing a hand on her own belly. "James is going to be beside himself when he gets back and sees how big I've gotten." After Penelope had eaten, Emily showed her to the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. "This was Adam's, but he insists on taking the barn while you're here. James and I are just across the hall if you need anything." Too tired to argue, Penelope thanked her and collapsed onto the bed. Despite the strangeness of her surroundings, she fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. The next morning, Penelope awoke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She dressed quickly and found Emily at the stove, humming as she cooked. "Good morning," Penelope said. "Can I help with anything? You're already up." "Adam said to let you sleep," Emily smiled. "Sit down, breakfast is almost ready. Adam's gone to see Jacob Miller about a new wheel for your wagon." "He's the best wheelwright in these parts," Penelope sat, feeling a twinge of guilt. "I hate to impose on you both like this." Emily waved away her concern. "Nonsense. It's nice having another woman around. Besides, Adam insisted." As they ate, Emily chattered about life on the homestead. She and James had been married for 6 years, and this would be their first child after years of hoping. Adam had never married, dedicating himself instead to building their farm. Their parents had died when Emily was just 16, and Adam had raised her since then. "He's the best man I know," Emily said with obvious affection. "Too good to be alone all these years, but he's never found the right woman, or maybe he's just too stubborn to look." Penelope learned that the Dawson farm produced wheat, corn, and vegetables, with a small herd of cattle tended by James. They sold their excess in Riverdale, the nearest town about 15 miles away. "It's not an easy life," Emily admitted, "but it's a good one. Now tell me about yourself." "Adam said you're headed to Caldwell." Penelope shared her story how she'd met Thomas Nolan when he came to work for her father's shipping business in St. Louis, their hasty marriage when she was 20, and the gradual realization that Thomas had more charm than substance. When he died of typhoid, she discovered they were deeply in debt. Her only option had been to sell what little she had and journey to her cousin Sarah's farm near Caldwell. "I found out I was expecting just after the funeral," she added quietly. "I'm not sure what kind of welcome I'll receive in Caldwell, a widow with a child and no husband to speak of." Emily reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "People can be cruel, but they can also surprise you with their kindness. You'll find your way." Adam returned mid-afternoon with news that Jacob Miller could craft a new wheel, but it would take at least a week. "He's got 2 other jobs ahead of yours," he explained to Penelope. "Says he can't rush good work." "A week?" Penelope felt a mixture of dismay and relief. Dismay at the delay in her journey, relief at having a little more time before facing her uncertain future in Caldwell. "I know it's not ideal," Adam said, "but you're welcome to stay here until it's ready. I can take you into town tomorrow if you need anything." Over the next few days, Penelope settled into the rhythm of life at the Dawson farm. She insisted on helping with chores, despite Emily and Adam's protests. She gathered eggs from the chickens, helped in the garden, and assisted Emily with preparing meals. The physical work was a welcome distraction from her worries about the future. Adam was often out working the fields or tending to the animals, but he joined them for meals. Penelope found herself watching him, the careful way he listened when others spoke, his quiet competence with every task, the rare but transformative smile that lit up his face. He was unlike any man she'd known before. 4 days after her arrival, Penelope was hanging laundry on the line when she noticed dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The air had turned still and heavy, and the birds had gone quiet. Adam appeared from the barn, his expression concerned. "Storm's coming," he said. "A bad one by the look of it. We need to secure everything." For the next hour they worked frantically, bringing in the livestock, shuttering windows, storing loose items that might blow away. The wind picked up, bending the tall grass and whipping at their clothing. "That should do it," Adam said as they finished, then looked at Penelope with concern. "You should get inside, rest a bit. You've been working too hard." "I'm fine," she insisted, though truth be told, her back was aching fiercely. As they headed toward the cabin, a jagged bolt of lightning split the sky, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. Penelope jumped, and Adam's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. "It's all right," he said. "We're safe here." The storm broke with fury, rain lashing at the cabin windows and wind howling around the eaves. Inside, Emily lit lamps against the premature darkness while Adam stoked the fire. "James should have been back by now," Emily fretted, looking out the window at the deluge. "He'll be caught in this for sure." "James knows these parts better than anyone," Adam reassured her. "He'll find shelter and wait it out." As the evening wore on, the storm showed no signs of abating. Emily eventually retired to bed, though Penelope doubted she would sleep much with worry for her husband. Adam and Penelope remained by the fire, listening to the tempest outside. "I should check on the barn," Adam said after a particularly violent gust rattled the cabin. "Make sure everything's secure." "Is that safe?" Penelope asked. "I'll tie a rope from the cabin to the barn," he explained. "Old trick my father taught me, in case the visibility gets too bad." Before he could rise, however, there was a pounding at the door. Adam opened it to reveal a drenched and exhausted James, water streaming from his hat and coat. "Thank God," Adam breathed, pulling his brother-in-law inside. "Emily's been worried sick." "Got caught by the creek," James gasped, shrugging out of his sodden coat. "Water's rising fast." "Had to abandon the wagon on high ground and ride Samson through before the crossing flooded completely." He looked up, noticing Penelope. "Madam," he nodded, looking slightly confused. "James, this is Mrs. Nolan," Adam explained. "Her wagon broke down on the east trail. She's staying with us until Miller fixes her wheel." After James went to reunite with his wife, Adam and Penelope sat in companionable silence, watching the fire. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside, Penelope felt a strange sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. "May I ask you something?" she ventured after a while. Adam nodded, his face half illuminated by the firelight. "Why have you been so kind to me? You could have simply pointed me toward town and gone on your way." He considered her question seriously before answering. "My father always said a man's character is revealed in how he treats those in need." He paused. "And no one should face their troubles alone." "Is that why you never married?" Penelope asked, then immediately regretted her boldness. "I'm sorry, that was impertinent." "No, it's a fair question," Adam replied, poking at the fire. "I suppose I've never met a woman who made me think I'd be better with her than without her, or perhaps I've been too busy looking after Emily and building this place." He glanced at her. "What about your husband? Were you happy?" The directness of his question surprised her, but Penelope found herself answering honestly. "Not particularly. Thomas was charming when he wanted to be. He could talk anyone into anything, including me, into marriage, but he wasn't a man who shouldered responsibility well." Adam nodded, as if this confirmed something he had suspected. "The child deserves better," he said simply. "Yes," Penelope agreed, resting a hand on her belly. "Yes, they do." The storm lasted through the night and into the next day, swelling the creek to dangerous levels and making travel impossible. James reported that several bridges had washed out, and Jacob Miller's workshop had been flooded, which would further delay the completion of Penelope's wheel. "Could be another 2 weeks now," Adam told her. "Miller lost some of his seasoned wood in the flood." Penelope nodded, trying to hide her concern. She had planned her journey carefully, with just enough money to reach Caldwell and establish herself there. Every day of delay meant dwindling resources. Adam seemed to read her thoughts. "Don't worry about the cost," he said. "Miller's a fair man and we can work something out." "I can't ask you to do that," Penelope protested. "You didn't ask," Adam replied with one of his rare smiles. "I offered." Over the next few days, as the floodwaters receded and the land began to dry, Penelope found herself growing increasingly comfortable at the Dawson farm. James turned out to be a jovial counterpoint to Adam's quiet nature, full of stories and jokes that kept them laughing at the dinner table. Emily's condition meant she tired easily, and Penelope gladly took on more of the household duties. She and Adam fell into an easy routine of working together on various tasks around the farm. He never treated her as incapable because of her pregnancy, instead adapting tasks to her abilities and teaching her new skills when she expressed interest. Penelope learned to milk the cow, mend fences, and even shoot with greater accuracy under Adam's patient instruction. One evening, nearly 2 weeks after the storm, Adam returned from Riverdale with supplies and news. "Miller says the wheel will be ready in 3 days," he announced as they sat around the dinner table. Penelope felt an unexpected pang at the news. "That's good," she said, attempting enthusiasm. "I've imposed on your hospitality far too long already." "Nonsense," Emily insisted. "You've been a godsend, especially with me moving like a beached whale these days." After dinner, Penelope stepped outside for some air. The night was clear, stars blazing in a moonless sky. She heard the door open behind her and knew without turning that it was Adam. "Beautiful night," he said, coming to stand beside her. "Yes," she agreed. "I never saw stars like this in St. Louis. Too many lamps, I suppose." They stood in silence for a moment before Adam spoke again. "Penelope," he began, using her first name for the first time, "I've been thinking about your situation." She turned to look at him, his profile outlined against the star-filled sky. "You don't have to go to Caldwell," he said quietly. "You could stay here." Penelope's heart quickened. "Stay." "As what?" Adam turned to face her fully. "As my wife, if you'd have me." She stared at him, speechless. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, this wasn't one of them. "I know it's sudden," he continued when she didn't respond. "And I know you're still mourning your husband. But I care for you, Penelope. These past weeks, watching you find your place here, seeing your strength and determination, I believe we could build a good life together." "Adam," she finally managed, "you hardly know me, and the baby would be mine in every way that matters," he said firmly. "I don't make this offer lightly. I'm not a man given to impulse or fancy. I know my own mind and I know what I want." He paused. "But I don't want you to feel obligated or trapped. You have choices, and I respect whatever decision you make." Penelope looked into his earnest blue eyes and felt a warmth spreading through her chest. In the short time she'd known him, Adam Dawson had shown her more consideration and kindness than Thomas had in 4 years of marriage. And she couldn't deny the growing attraction she felt toward him, not just his physical strength or handsome features, but his integrity, his gentle patience, his unwavering sense of right and wrong. "I need time to think," she said finally. Adam nodded. "Of course. The offer stands, whatever you decide." He hesitated, then lightly touched her hand. "Good night, Penelope." She watched him walk back to the barn, her mind whirling with possibilities she hadn't dared to consider before. The next morning at breakfast, Emily noticed something was different. "Are you feeling all right?" she asked Penelope. "You seem distracted." "I'm fine," Penelope assured her, avoiding Adam's gaze across the table, "just thinking about what lies ahead." James looked between them with sudden understanding. "Did you ask her?" he said to Adam. Adam nodded once, his expression unreadable. Emily's eyes widened. "Ask her what?" When no one immediately answered, she gasped. "Adam Dawson, did you propose marriage to Penelope?" "I did," Adam admitted. "And she's thinking about it, which is her right." Emily looked like she might burst with excitement but managed to contain herself. "Well, I think it's wonderful," she declared, "and I'll say no more about it." She immediately broke this promise by adding, "Except that you'd be a fool to turn him down, Penelope Nolan." "Emily," Adam warned, but there was no real anger in his voice. Later that day, as Penelope helped Emily hang fresh curtains, the younger woman broached the subject again. "I'm sorry about this morning," she said. "I shouldn't have embarrassed you like that." "It's all right," Penelope replied, handing her another curtain. "I understand you care for your brother." Emily paused in her work. "More than care, I owe him everything. After our parents died, Adam gave up his own plans to raise me. He was only 22, but he took on that responsibility without complaint. He's the most honorable man I know." Penelope nodded, thinking of the quiet strength Adam had shown in every aspect of his life. "I believe you, but marriage is such a serious step, especially in my condition." "Of course it is," Emily agreed. "And Adam would never rush you, but I've seen how he looks at you, Penelope. I've never seen him look at anyone that way before." She smiled softly. "And I've seen how you look at him, too." Penelope felt her cheeks warm. Was she so transparent? "Whatever you decide," Emily continued, "know that you've brought something to this house that was missing before, a kind of light. I think you feel it too." That evening, Penelope took a walk alone to the small creek that ran at the edge of the Dawson property. The water had returned to its normal level, flowing clear and cool over smooth stones. She sat on a fallen log, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. In the 3 weeks since her wagon wheel had broken, her life had changed in ways she could never have anticipated. She had found friendship, security, and the possibility of love. Adam Dawson was everything Thomas Nolan had not been: reliable, honorable, kind. The thought of building a life with him filled her with a quiet joy. But there was still the matter of her unborn child. Would Adam truly be able to love another man's child as his own? And what about her own feelings? Was she ready to open her heart again so soon after Thomas's death? The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Adam, hat in hand, standing a respectful distance away. "May I join you?" he asked. Penelope nodded, and he sat beside her on the log, leaving space between them. "I want to be clear about something," he said after a moment. "I'm not offering you marriage out of pity or obligation. I'm offering because in these few weeks, I've come to care for you deeply. I admire your courage, your determination, your kind heart." He looked at her directly. "I think I could love you very well, Penelope Nolan, and your child would want for nothing that I could provide." Penelope felt tears well in her eyes. "Why me, Adam? You could have any woman in the territory, someone without my complications." Adam's gaze never wavered. "Because you're the first woman who's ever made me think that sharing my life would be better than living it alone. Because when you smile, I feel like I've accomplished something worthwhile. Because you're brave and strong and beautiful." He paused. "And because when I imagine my future now, I can't see it without you in it." His words touched something deep inside her. For the first time since Thomas's death, perhaps for the first time ever, Penelope felt truly valued, truly seen. "Yes," she said softly. Adam blinked. "Yes, yes, I will marry you, Adam Dawson." As she spoke the words, a sense of rightness settled over her. This wasn't the desperate decision of a woman with no options. It was a choice made from a place of growing affection and mutual respect. Adam's face transformed with a smile that took her breath away. Slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, he leaned forward and kissed her. His lips were warm and gentle against hers, and Penelope found herself responding with a passion that surprised her. When they finally parted, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "We'll build a good life together," he promised. "You'll never regret this decision." They returned to the cabin hand in hand, where Emily took one look at them and burst into tears of joy. James clapped Adam on the back so hard he nearly knocked him over, and then insisted on opening the bottle of whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. "To Adam and Penelope," he toasted, his face flushed with happiness. "May your lives together be long and blessed." They decided on a simple ceremony in 2 weeks' time. Reverend Thompson from Riverdale would perform the service, and they would invite the handful of neighboring families and friends. Penelope would wear a dress Emily was altering for her, and Adam would wear his Sunday best. The next day, Adam took Penelope to retrieve her wagon, now repaired with a sturdy new wheel. As they drove back to the farm, he pointed out landmarks and boundaries of their property, speaking of future plans with quiet enthusiasm. "We could add on to the cabin," he suggested. "Another bedroom for the children, and perhaps a proper parlor for you, children." The plural caught Penelope's attention. "You want more children? Beyond this one?" she asked, placing a hand on her belly. Adam glanced at her, a slight flush visible beneath his tan. "I've always wanted a family," he admitted. "If you're willing." Penelope found herself smiling. "I would like that too." In the days leading up to the wedding, Penelope wrote to her cousin Sarah in Caldwell, explaining the unexpected turn her journey had taken and her impending marriage. She wasn't sure what Sarah's reaction would be. They hadn't been particularly close growing up, but she felt it important to let her know she wouldn't be arriving as planned. Emily threw herself into wedding preparations with delighted enthusiasm, despite her advanced pregnancy making movement increasingly difficult. The house was cleaned from top to bottom. Special foods were prepared and preserved, and flowers were gathered from the prairie to decorate the cabin. Adam, meanwhile, worked from dawn until dusk, determined to have all the farm chores well in hand before taking time for their wedding and the small honeymoon he had planned 3 days at a hotel in Riverdale, the closest thing to luxury the area could offer. The evening before their wedding, Penelope sat on the porch enjoying the cool air after a warm day. Adam joined her, handing her a small wooden box. "I wanted to give you this before tomorrow," he said. "It was my mother's." Penelope opened the box to find a simple gold band with a small pearl set into it. "Adam, it's beautiful," she whispered. "It's not fancy," he said apologetically. "My father was a farmer, not a wealthy man, but they were happy together for 30 years before she died." "It's perfect," Penelope assured him, deeply touched by the gesture. She looked up at him, this man who had so unexpectedly become the center of her world. "I want you to know something. I may not have come to you with my heart whole, but what I give you is true. I care for you deeply, Adam Dawson." Adam took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "That's all I ask for, Penelope. The rest will come with time." The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Emily helped Penelope dress in the altered gown, a soft blue cotton that complemented her eyes, and had been cleverly designed to accommodate her growing belly. Emily had also crafted a crown of wildflowers for her hair. "You look beautiful," Emily said, blinking back tears as she finished arranging Penelope's hair. "Adam won't be able to take his eyes off you." Guests began arriving mid-morning, the Millers who had repaired the wheel, the Hendersons from the neighboring farm, several other families from the surrounding area, and Reverend Thompson with his wife. They gathered in the cleared barn, which had been decorated with more wildflowers and ribbons. James stood beside Adam at the front, both men looking uncharacteristically nervous in their formal clothes. When Penelope entered on the arm of Jacob Miller, who had offered to give her away, a hush fell over the small gathering. Adam's face as he watched her approach was something Penelope knew she would remember for the rest of her life, a mixture of awe, tenderness, and unmistakable love. In that moment, any lingering doubts she might have harbored vanished completely. The ceremony was brief, but heartfelt. They exchanged vows and rings. Penelope had managed to purchase a simple band for Adam with money she had carefully set aside. When Reverend Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, Adam kissed her with a reverence that brought tears to her eyes. The celebration afterward was joyful but modest, a meal prepared by the women of the community, music provided by James on his fiddle, and dancing despite the summer heat. As the sun began to set, Adam and Penelope said their goodbyes and departed for Riverdale in the wagon, now decorated with ribbons and a "just married" sign courtesy of the mischievous James. Their 3 days in Riverdale passed in a sweet haze of discovery and growing intimacy. Adam proved to be a considerate and gentle lover, mindful of Penelope's condition, and focused on her comfort and pleasure. For Penelope, the physical aspect of marriage became, for the first time, a source of joy rather than duty. They talked for hours, sharing stories from their childhoods, their hopes for the future, their fears and dreams. With each conversation, each shared laugh or quiet moment of understanding, the bond between them strengthened. On their last evening at the hotel, as they lay together in the comfortable bed, Adam placed a hand on Penelope's rounded belly. "I felt something," he said with wonder as the baby moved beneath his palm. "He or she is quite active in the evenings," Penelope smiled, covering his hand with her own. "I'll be a good father," Adam promised, his voice solemn. "To this child and any others we might have, I swear it." Penelope's heart swelled with emotion. "I know you will," she said softly. "That's the kind of man you are." They returned to the farm to find a letter waiting from Sarah in Caldwell. Penelope opened it with slight trepidation, but her concern turned to relief as she read. "Sarah sends her congratulations," she told Adam. "She says she's happy I've found someone worthy of me and invites us to visit when the baby is old enough to travel." Life settled into a new pattern. Adam continued his work on the farm, now with an eye toward expanding their operations to provide for their growing family. Penelope took over management of the household, introducing new efficiencies and comforts that transformed the cabin into a true home. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, talking about their day or sometimes just enjoying the comfortable silence between them. As Penelope's pregnancy advanced, Adam's protectiveness increased. He insisted on her resting frequently and took over many of her heavier chores despite her protests. "You're carrying precious cargo," he would say with a smile that melted her resistance. Emily's time came in early August, a difficult labor that lasted nearly 2 days and left everyone exhausted, but ended happily with the birth of a healthy boy. They named William Adam after both his grandfathers. Penelope watched the tender way Adam held his nephew and felt a surge of love for this man who had so unexpectedly become her husband. As summer turned to fall, Penelope's own time grew near. Her belly was enormous now, and she found even simple movements challenging. Adam rarely left her side, arranging his work so he could return to the cabin frequently to check on her. The first pains began on a crisp October morning as Penelope was helping Emily hang laundry. By evening, she was in the throes of active labor, with Emily coaching her through each contraction while Adam paced anxiously outside the bedroom door. "I've never heard a man pray so fervently," Emily told her between pains. "He loves you something fierce, Penelope Dawson." After hours of labor, as the first light of dawn crept through the window, Penelope gave birth to a son, a sturdy boy with a shock of dark hair and lungs that announced his arrival to the world with impressive volume. Emily cleaned and swaddled the infant, then opened the door to admit Adam, who entered looking pale and terrified. "You have a son," Emily told him with a tired smile before leaving them alone. Adam approached the bed cautiously, his eyes moving from Penelope's exhausted face to the small bundle in her arms. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm fine," Penelope assured him, though she felt as if she'd been trampled by a herd of cattle. "Would you like to meet your son?" Adam sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Penelope placed the baby in his arms. The look of wonder that spread across his face as he gazed down at the infant was something she would treasure forever. "He's perfect," Adam whispered. "What shall we name him?" They had discussed names but hadn't settled on one. Now, looking at her husband holding her son with such tenderness, Penelope knew. "Benjamin," she said. "Benjamin Adam Dawson." Adam looked up, his eyes shining. "Benjamin," he repeated, testing the name. "I like it." He gently touched the baby's tiny hand, which reflexively curled around his finger. "Welcome to the world, Benjamin Dawson. Your mama and I have been waiting for you." In that moment, watching her husband and son together, Penelope felt a completeness she had never known before. The broken wheel that had seemed such a disaster had led her to this place, this man, this life that was so much richer and more fulfilling than anything she could have imagined. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges. Benjamin grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his mother's eyes and his father's quiet determination. Adam legally adopted him when he was 2, though in every way that mattered. He had been Adam's son from the moment of his birth. 2 years after Benjamin's arrival, Penelope gave birth to twin girls, Sarah and Emma, who brought a whirlwind of feminine energy to the household. Adam adored his daughters, though he admitted to Penelope that their ability to wrap him around their little fingers from the moment they were born was slightly alarming. The farm prospered under their joint management. Adam's knowledge of the land combined with Penelope's head for business allowed them to expand their operations and acquire additional acreage. They built a new, larger house with plenty of room for their growing family, and added a proper barn and several outbuildings. Emily and James remained close neighbors, building their own home on an adjacent parcel of land. Their son William was joined by 3 more children over the years, creating a cousin clan that was inseparable in work and play. When Benjamin was 8, a letter arrived that changed their lives once more. Penelope's cousin Sarah had passed away unexpectedly, leaving her substantial farm near Caldwell to Penelope. After much discussion, Adam and Penelope decided to sell the property rather than relocate their family. The proceeds allowed them to further expand their own farm and establish trust funds for each of their children's education. On the evening of their 10th wedding anniversary, Adam surprised Penelope with a special gift, a locket containing miniature portraits of their 3 children on one side and a small piece of wood on the other. "Is that?" Penelope asked, examining the sliver of wood. "A piece of the broken wagon wheel," Adam confirmed with a smile. "I saved it all these years. It seemed right to include it. If not for that wheel breaking, we might never have found each other." Penelope closed her hand around the locket, deeply moved by his thoughtfulness. "It was the best accident of my life," she said softly. Adam drew her into his arms. "Not an accident," he murmured against her hair. "Fate. You were always meant to be mine, Penelope Dawson, and I was always meant to be yours. The wheel breaking just hurried things along." As they stood together in the golden light of sunset, surrounded by the home and family they had built together, Penelope knew he was right. What had begun with a broken wheel had become a love story written across the Kansas prairie, a story of second chances, unexpected blessings, and a happiness that only grew deeper with each passing year. 10 years later, on the 20th anniversary of the day, Adam had found Penelope stranded on the trail. They hosted a celebration at their farm. The property had grown into one of the most prosperous in the county, with a large 2-story house, extensive barns and stables, and nearly 1,000 acres of cultivated land and pasture. Benjamin, now a young man of 20, had recently returned from 2 years at a college in St. Louis, an opportunity neither Adam nor Penelope had ever dreamed possible for themselves. He had his father's quiet strength and his mother's sharp mind, and he was eager to implement new farming techniques he had studied. The twins, Sarah and Emma, were 18 and as different as two sisters could be despite their identical appearance. Sarah had inherited her father's love of the land and could often be found working alongside the men, while Emma had her mother's head for figures and managed the farm's accounts with remarkable skill. Their youngest, 12-year-old Joshua, born during a blizzard that had nearly prevented Adam from fetching the doctor in time, was the image of his father in both looks and temperament. The anniversary celebration brought together friends and family from across the region. Emily and James came with their 5 children, including William, who had recently announced his engagement to the daughter of Riverdale's mayor. Jacob Miller, now in his 70s but still crafting the finest wagon wheels in the territory, arrived with his extended family. Neighbors who had stood by the Dawsons through drought years and prosperous ones alike filled the yard with laughter and conversation. As twilight approached, Adam stood on the porch steps and raised his glass. 20 years ago today, he began, his voice carrying across the assembled guests. I was riding home from Riverdale when I came across a stranded wagon with a broken wheel. Inside was the most beautiful, stubborn, determined woman I had ever seen, and she was very, very pregnant. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Penelope shook her head, smiling as she stood beside him. I offered to help, Adam continued, thinking I'd fix her wheel and send her on her way. Little did I know that God had other plans that day. He looked down at Penelope, his eyes full of the same love she had seen on their wedding day 2 decades earlier. That broken wheel brought me the greatest blessing of my life, my wife, the mother of my children, my partner in everything. So tonight, I want to raise a glass to broken wheels and the unexpected journeys they take us on. To broken wheels, the guests echoed, raising their glasses. Later, after the guests had departed and the children had retired to their rooms, Adam and Penelope sat alone on the porch swing, his arm around her shoulders as they gazed at the star-filled sky. You ever wonder what would have happened if your wheel hadn't broken that day? Adam asked softly. Penelope considered the question. Sometimes, I might have made it to Caldwell, lived with Sarah until the baby came, perhaps found work as a seamstress or teacher. She looked up at him. But I can't imagine any life that would have brought me the happiness I've found with you. Adam's arm tightened around her. When I saw you standing beside that wagon, something inside me just knew. Even before I learned your name or heard your voice, something in me recognized you. It took me a little longer, Penelope admitted with a smile. I was rather preoccupied with being stranded and very pregnant. Adam laughed. You were magnificent, all fire and determination. I think I started falling in love with you right then. And I started falling in love with you when you showed me how to milk a cow, Penelope replied. You were so patient, never making me feel foolish for not knowing how. Who would have thought a broken wheel and a cow would be the foundation of 20 years of marriage? Adam mused. Penelope leaned her head against his shoulder. 20 years, she murmured. It seems both an eternity and the blink of an eye. And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat, Adam said, kissing the top of her head. Every moment, every challenge, every joy as long as I was facing it with you. As the night deepened around them, Penelope thought of all the twists and turns their life together had taken the years of drought that had tested their resilience, the birth of each of their children, the slow building of their farm and fortune through hard work and careful planning. Through it all, Adam had been her constant, her partner, her best friend. What had begun as convenience, a stranded woman accepting help from a kind stranger, had grown into something profound and enduring. The broken wheel that had seemed such a disaster had been, in fact, the beginning of everything good in her life. I love you, Adam Dawson, she said softly into the night air, today and always. Adam's reply was a kiss, gentle at first, then deepening with a passion that 20 years of marriage had only strengthened. When they finally parted, his eyes held the same promise they had on the day he'd proposed. "Always," he whispered back, "until the stars fall from the sky." Together they sat, watching those very stars shine down on the life. They had built a life neither could have imagined on that dusty trail 20 years before, when a broken wagon wheel had changed everything.